I'm grateful that I don't have kids. My dog hasn't quite figured out how to use it. But he does have a Twitter account. Diplo dog. Anyway, thank you very much for that. I think that's really important food for thought, and I think that, again, it's one of the things that brings a lot of hope, is the fact that young people, and in general, are accepting of diversity. So how do you set the table for them? You use the dinner table, and how do you set the table for them in a way that they will actually enjoy that predisposition, and one that is, again, very positive for us moving forward. I'd like to turn now to a slightly different tack on the issue, but one that I think needs to go hand in glove with the educational one, because I think, again, given the complexity of the issue, we need to look not only at education and prevention, but we also need to look at engagement and policing as well. So I'd like to introduce Sergeant Paul Dunn and Superintendent Tammy Pozzebon, who are here from the Calgary Police Service. They're here to speak about the ReDirect program. ReDirect is a new initiative aimed at preventing young people from turning to extremism, which has been launched in Calgary. The program works to change young people's paths before it leads to violence. ReDirect was launched by the Calgary Police Service in partnership with Public Safety Canada, the RCMP, and the City of Calgary's Community and Neighbourhood Services, and is an education, awareness, and prevention platform. I turn it over to the two of you.
I'm not quite sure how we... Right.
Sorry.
You know where it is? It's already open, so just keep it open window.
You see, you do know how to do it.
Firstly, thank you to the Ambassador and the Government of Canada for bringing us to Norway, and thank you to you guys and the people of Norway for allowing us to come and talk about our ReDirect program and what we're doing in Canada. What I'll do here is I'll go over a little bit of the context of how ReDirect exists within the Calgary Police Service, because context is important, especially in radicalization. And if you misunderstand context when you're dealing with youth and young adults, then you can make some critical mistakes that are very difficult to recover from. So, is somebody having concerns about Western foreign policy and being angry about that, and then making decisions based on that? If you take that out of the context, you can victimize people that were never at risk of radicalization. Or is it an environmental issue or an animal rights issue? So we really work on context and looking at that and making sure that we are getting a full picture about what's going on in a person's life and avoid making those mistakes. So ReDirect's an early intervention and prevention program. It is within a police service. So the question is do the police have a role to play in countering radicalization? Well, we do, but we have a small part to play in it. The community has a part to play on it. So it's a puzzle, and it's a network of different organizations. All we're doing is bringing our part to this complex situation and working with those other partners that are doing their parts, like some of the programs we hear today. So policing does have a role because we have access to some of the information. And I'm going to give you a little bit about Calgary. Like what environment do we work in? Because it is a little bit different to Norway's policing structure and Scandinavian policing structures. And let's be honest, hands up in the room, who here knows where Calgary is? Well, that's pretty good. That's
Olympics.
Olympics. Okay, who here before, when they knew they were coming here today, checked where Calgary was before we got there? So that's what we're going to do here, and hopefully go through it. So, where is Calgary? Well, as mentioned, it was the home of the 1988 Winter Olympics. And I mentioned it earlier this morning, also in the history of Olympians, the greatest winter Olympian. Yeah? Some of you know who I'm talking about. So Calgary was founded in 1875. We currently have a population of 1.2 million within the metropolitan area. Our GDP is 97 odd billion Canadian dollars a year, and we sit approximately 1,000 and a bit meters above sea level. So it's very hot in the summer. It's somewhat cold in the winter, and we're a long way from that actual sea. So our economy is based on oil and gas, natural resources, healthcare, agriculture, and the service industry and tourism, and then lots of those other support industries that feed those main areas. We get hot, like I say, hot in the winter, in the summer, and fairly cold in the winter. But because of thermal winds that come over the Rocky Mountains, we don't stay cold for very long. So we can be literally, thanks to Chinook winds, we can be dealing with minus 25 Celsius in the morning, and by the afternoon we're dealing with plus 10. So it makes for interesting road conditions for us. We don't get a great deal, so we do get a fair bit of snow. About 54 days a year of snow, but we get enough for skiing. And I've been skiing already this year. I went skiing last Wednesday, so the ski hills are open, which is good for us. So that's Calgary, and then what's Calgary's police service? Well, in Canada we have a fairly diverse and complex policing system. We have the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who are our national police service. And then they also provide provincial policing for a number of our provinces in Canada. Now in Alberta, which is the province that Calgary is in, we have a piece of legislation called the Police Act. And that basically legislates that if a municipality has a population in excess of 5,000 people, they have two options. You can get your policing from the contractor, which is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or you can establish your own police service. So that's essentially how Calgary Police Service comes about. We've established our own police service well over 100 years ago now. And Chief Roger Chaffin is our new chief that just came in a few weeks ago. There's 2,132 police officers, what we call sworn police officers in our organisation, and then we have about 1,236 civilian support workers that undertake a number of other different roles within the service. And then there's a not so interesting fact about our operating budget and how much we spend a year. So within the Calgary Police Service, we have a crime prevention and reduction continuum, and this, for want of a better way to describe it in layman's terms, is an ethos about how we do policing. So it really deals with focusing our energies and our resources on preventing crime within the community and working with the community to prevent crime before it occurs. So we're doing early intervention and treatment programs, but we're still prepared as police officers. We have a role in public safety, so we still have to do an enforcement component. And that really weaves its way into everything we do. Doesn't matter where you work in our service, a lot of stuff comes back to our crime prevention and reduction continuum, and what role does each individual business unit play to support the continuum. And if you guys want to know more about our continuum or our programs or our service in general, if you just go to our website, calgarypolice.ca, everything is publicly accessible. So you can get on there and take a look at those things. So, a large part of our continuum work is done within our community and youth services section. Now, when I talk about a large part of our work, we have about 185 members of staff that work within our community and youth services section, and ReDirect is housed within CYSS, and the superintendent has many portfolios as part of her bureau, of which Community and Youth Services is one of them. And this is just an idea of all the different number of programs we have. We essentially have 14 teams that manage 35 different programs within our community and youth services section. And of those 185 people that we have working in there, about 124 of them are police officers, and the rest are civilian workers. And that can be social workers, psychologists, and other civilian workers. And then we also have probably close to 100 volunteers that work in things like our victim assistance unit and stuff like that. And we even have a dog. We have a dog called Hawk, who is a trauma response dog. So he comes out and works with victims of crime. He's a black lab, and he wanders around the office, and he walks in. When he's not searching for food, he'll just sit longingly at the door of your office and stare at you like you need help. It's very, very disturbing. You start to worry about Hawk. So, and that's the beauty of the community and youth services section, is we actually all work in the same open cubicle office area. So all of our different programs are right there. So if I want to go and talk to one of the sergeants that runs one of the other programs, I don't have to walk very far to go and talk to that person. So we're all interconnected. We see each other on a daily basis, and we know what everybody's doing. So I just want to quickly touch on some of the intervention and prevention programs that we have within our CYSS program. And here are some of the key ones that we have in our education unit and our community and youth services. So we have our Stay Smart, Stay Safe program. That's a partnership with our boards of education, which has police officers working in elementary schools. So our elementary schools are essentially 5 to 12-year-olds in Canada. So that's a police officer actually in the school, talking about how to be a good citizen, teaching lessons in those classes, and really dealing with youth at a very early stage where they have a positive interaction with police officers and the community. Then we have our school resource officer programs. That's for our 12 to 18-year-olds, and that involves a police officer in every single Calgary Board of Education and Catholic school in Calgary. So there's a police officer that works in the school with the teachers. So again, they see police officers on a daily basis. They deal with the officers. They build positive relationships with officers. And this is really key for Calgary in a country that's built on immigration, because we have a lot of people coming to Canada where they don't come from countries where policing is a positive role model for them. So this gives them an opportunity at a very real critical age to start developing positive relationships and understanding what policing is like in Canada. Then we have our diversity resource team, and that's essentially dealing with the multiple different types of cultures and diverse groups of immigrants that we have in Calgary. And they're broken down into different teams based on location. So we have a Southeast Asian portfolio, we have an African portfolio, and again, they interact and overlap and work with each other all the time. Our police crisis and police and crisis team, that's dealing with mental health issues. So it's police officers and social workers from Alberta Health Services working with our vulnerable homeless community. People that may be living on the street, or they have mental health problems that make them victims of crime or susceptible to crime. So again, working with them on early intervention to prevent them getting into any further trouble. And then obviously we have our natural crime prevention teams that you know, how to make your home safe, your business is safe, how to lessen the opportunity to be a victim of crime. Then we have the Youth Services Unit, and that's the unit I essentially work in, and that's where the community and youth services gets really, really big. So across the top here you have some of our other programs. So at the very first three, we have police cadet programs. The very first one is that's a 12 to 18-year-old cadet program where we bring the youth in and we teach them citizenship and leadership and physical fitness. And they bring them in once a week, and then they take them away on camps over the summer and over the winter months, and adventure training. And really, and it's not about kids that are vulnerable. We take kids in from all areas of Calgary to run them through this program, and it's completely free to the parent. There's no cost. We give them the equipment, we give them the uniform, and we presently have over 130 youth involved in our cadet program, in our Calgary Police Cadet Corps. Our auxiliary cadets. So here's the thing. We found that we had a lot of young people that want to become police officers, but they lack life skills and knowledge. But they're good people. They just need a chance to develop. So the auxiliary cadet program provided a paid work experience job, and it gave them an opportunity to get that experience. And now we have some of these young people that are starting to become police officers. And then we have a number of other programs that we have. Power plays a really key program. Immigrants that come to Calgary, what does it mean to be Canadian? Well, in this case, what it means to be Canadian is once a week we take them to an ice rink and we get them out on the ice and play hockey with them, right? And get them to realise that, hey, this is what part of being Canadian is. And then right at the bottom we have some of the more key programs. And the first one is, and this is where ReDirect sort of finds its home, is we have our multi-agency school support program, and then we have our youth at risk development program. Now both those teams, one deals with 5 to 12-year-olds, and the other one deals with 10 to 18-year-olds. So the MAST program, that deals with behaviours that teachers observe in school of children that are vulnerable either to getting into crime or being victims of crime. And then what happens is we have, in that particular program, we have 15 partnerships of a police officer working directly side by side with a social worker. And then they work with that family and the youth to mitigate any of those vulnerabilities that they have. And then our YARD program is the exact same concept. It's teams of police officers and social workers working together to eliminate vulnerabilities. So the question is why do we need ReDirect? Well, Canada does have a history with extremism on a number of different levels. And for those that aren't aware of what the Canada landscape is, you know, we've had problems with far-right extremism, and we've had problems with environmental extremism. And then what we've dealt with most recently is we've dealt with this problem of Islamist or Salafist or extremism, or essentially perversions of the Muslim faith to justify violence against another person and that. So we've had a couple of high profile, obviously you probably guys heard last year we had an attack on Parliament Hill with Zakia Akkouh. We had Martin Couture-Rouleau. He ran down a couple of soldiers in his vehicle last year just prior to the Parliament Hill incident. We've had Toronto 18, which was an attempt to bomb in Canada. Derailment, the Via Rail derailment plot, which was to derail one of our major trains. And then, unfortunately, we've had a couple of Canadians that have really come to the forefront with, in Daesh, ISIS, IS, whichever one of those you choose. In Andre Poulin and John Maguire, they really made it right to the front of the list for propaganda videos, like and specifically targeting Canadians and North American Western cultures as to this is where you need to be. And then in Calgary, we had our rogues gallery, as it were, Damien Claremont, Salman Ashrafi, Farah Sheardon, and the Gordon brothers. And they were a small cell of Calgarians that travelled out to Syria in late 2012, 2013. But specifically, Farah Sheardon is well known because he was on a Vice News video where he threatened Barack Obama, which kind of went viral. So we have Calgarians. So that's kind of the environment that ReDirect is working within. So for the academics in here, you may have heard of Taylor and Horgan's theoretical milestones and a trajectory towards radicalization. So that's understanding that you have a law-abiding citizen at one end of a spectrum, and then at the other end of the spectrum you have somebody that turns to extremism. But within there you have a series of cognitive openings, things that happen in a person's life that drives them towards radicalization. And I heard a great analogy from your guys' police today about steps. Taking steps upwards towards being a good citizen and steps downward towards going towards extremism and crime. Well, where ReDirect really sits is we sit in early intervention and prevention. We're not in the business of de-radicalization. We're in the business of removing vulnerabilities that stop somebody before they ever get towards radicalization in the first place. Now, that's not to say that if somebody becomes radicalized, we couldn't work with them, but right now we're really early on and we're focusing our efforts around that engagement component, where they start to first become involved and develop thought patterns and ideas that will lead them towards committing violence. So how does it work? Well, one of the challenges we had, and I'll go on to it a little bit, is the role of policing in this business. Police can't fix this on their own. We need the community. The community can't do it on its own because they need the police. So we've got part of the puzzle, and the community's got part of the puzzle. But how do we work together? Because we have information that's useful to them, but can we share that information? But how much of that information can we share with them? And then how much can they do? Because the real work is done by the community. That's where the real focus of turning these people around happens. So what we are as Calgary Police Service and ReDirect is facilitators for connecting those people with them. So essentially what happens is we take in a referral to the ReDirect program from a number of different sources. It could be from other police officers, it could be from somebody within the schools that's noticed. But primarily what we hope to get to as we build trust in the program is we want friends and families and co-workers to send us the referrals. They're the people that know the person. They interact with them on a daily basis, and they're the person that's going to start to notice some behavioural changes. So essentially what we do is we put them into an assessment process. And in that assessment process, what will happen is we'll look at, can we refer them to another program within the Calgary Police Service? Can we refer them to another program that's already within the community that's outside of our service? Has that person potentially gone too far and we now need to be dealing with public safety and we need to utilize our investigative resources? So if we determine that they are appropriate for ReDirect, what we'll do is we'll push them forward to our multi-agency panel. So our multi-agency panel is really that crux of how do we involve the community and have the community make the decision about how this person's helped and not be the police making the decision. So what happens at the multi-agency panel is it essentially consists of 3 entities. So the biggest entity is the case planning team. So my role as the coordinator of the multi-agency panel, which we're establishing, is I present information to the panel, and it's about behaviours, about what is being experienced, what is that person doing. And that panel consists of representatives from our social services agencies, our Alberta Healthcare, our teachers, our criminal justice system. Now, why those particular people? Because that group of particular people on a daily basis already deals with information about people and make decisions on how to develop an individualized support plan. So as police, all I do is present the information. I don't make a decision. It's not my decision as to what we do with that individual, about whether they come into ReDirect or how we're going to go forward with them. My job is to present the information and then make sure that the plan is executed and continues. So if they're successful in the multi-agency panel, what they do is that planning team then develops an individualized support plan for the person and their family. And then what happens is we have within ReDirect is we have a police officer and a social worker that work side by side. So for those that have been astutely listening, we are a team of 3 people right now in Calgary. Now, that social worker and that police officer will then execute that individualized support plan for the individual. Now, what would that look like? Well, there's so many different variables to what that could look like, because vulnerabilities in different people are different things. So it's very difficult for me to say to you, you know, it's this or this. Like it could be the person needs help finding employment, the person needs help integrating into Canadian society. They could be angry about something. They may theologically not be grounded in a religion they've chosen. It can be so many things. But essentially, what it is that multi-agency panel case planning team will have developed the concept and the ideas of how we're going to remove those vulnerabilities. And I'm running out of time. But then what will happen is we will report back to the multi-agency panel on a regular basis about how's the plan going, how's this individual working, and then we will we'll adjust the plan, or we'll exit the person from the program as required. So the big question was, well, how do we involve the community? Like really involve the community? And because as police officers, we have a whole bunch of information, some of it's secret, some of it's sensitive, but we can't just take out into the community. So the way we're doing that is we're establishing a community advisory committee. So that's going to be representative of the Calgary community. Now, whether that's faith leaders or charitable organizations that are already working in Calgary, and we're going to ask them to provide direction and advice on ReDirect on how we do business. How do we work with the challenges or the trends that we're experiencing? So we essentially want that group to give us their advice on what ReDirect's doing. And the Community Advisory Committee really sits at the very heart of ReDirect, because they're the ones that are going to tell us how we deal with a specific issue. So if it's a fact that our youth can't find employment, how do we fix that? You know, if it's our youth aren't doing well in school, well, how do we fix that? What resources can they leverage? And they won't deal with specific case file information, but they will deal with the trends. So they're people that have knowledge, they have the ideas, and they can leverage that within the community. And then our final group is really our strategic committee, and that's the managers. And all they do is they make sure that everybody's talking to each other and everybody's following the advice and guidance and that. But essentially what's at the very heart of this is Calgary Police Service assists by administering and running ReDirect, but we do not make the decisions in ReDirect. The community does. It's the community's ideas on how to deal with this problem, and that's how we, within Calgary Police Service, have a philosophy as to how we can go forward on the subject of counter-radicalization at this time. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Paul. Next, I'll turn to our colleague here from Norway. Tore Bjørgo is Professor of Police Science at the Norwegian Police University College and Adjunct Research Professor at the Norwegian Institute of International Affairs. Among his areas of research have been political extremism and terrorism, racist and right-wing violence, youth gangs, organized crimes, crime prevention, and policing. He also coordinates the Norwegian Consortium for Research on Terrorism and International Crime.
Well, I've been given a list of questions which I was asked to address, so I'll try to go through them. And the first question was, what has been Norway's experience with homegrown radicalization? I think that, looking from what Maurice here, it looks like the main idea is to think about foreign fighters and this kind of radicalization, but I think we need to go further back. Because we have had in Norway a lot of experience with violent radicalization, but not only with people belonging to kind of pro-Al-Qaeda, pro-IS groups, but also in particular with far-right extremist groups. And in particular, from the late 1980s until the early 2000s, we had a major problem of right-wing extremist youth groups in Norway. It was not evenly distributed across the country. It popped up in certain local communities where it became really huge problems. And we've had some communities which have also been places where the community really had to make a major job in cooperation between different agencies and the local populations, civil society, and where we have learned quite a lot from how to handle these kind of extremist groups. In particular, we have this problem in the small town of Brumunddal. We've had it in parts of eastern part of Oslo, for example. We had it in Kristiansand. And these have in many ways been three major places for learning how to handle it. It started quite bad in Brumunddal, where there was a tendency with both the police and the municipality to sort of play what we call in Norwegian svarteper, with who will end up with a bad card. And the police tended to say that this is a social problem, you have to handle it in the municipality and the social services, whereas the municipality said this is a policing problem and you have to handle it. And the problem was about quite a lot of young marginalized people who took out their aggression against local immigrant shop owners and refugees coming to the town. And it was a lot of violence. It went on for several years. Lots of really serious incidents with bombings and firebombs and shootings, and it was for a long time belittled. It was kind of denied that this is a problem. And until it became so bad that the community and the politicians and the police really realized that we have to do something about it. This is our problem. And then something happened. We got a lot of local mobilization, and they started to learn from what they could do. We had researchers coming in, and the problem was also gradually redefined, because to begin with it was seen as a kind of this is mainly a problem of racism, and we have to sort of turn our backs to them. They have to isolate these people in order to sort of isolate the problem. But in reality, it turned out that the problem had to do with marginalization, and that was why the problem of violence and xenophobia came about. So the definition of problem was how to try to include these people, how to get them back. And one of the learning experience was that it was a kind of belief at the time that the important thing is to prevent people from joining Nazi groups or racist groups, because once they have joined them, they are lost. The only thing we can do is to sort of isolate them and destroy them, get rid of them. And what was one of the learning points from Brumunddal was that actually it is possible to bring them back. It is possible to reintegrate these marginalized young people, and that was one of the really important pieces we could learn. The second place where we learned a lot was from the eastern part of Oslo, from places like Nordstrand and later Bernard, and where we had a police unit which was quite the opposite of what you have seen in Brumunddal to begin with. It was the Manglerud police station. We have one of the local heroes sitting down there, Bjørn, who took the lead. They realized we have a problem here. They saw the problem before anyone else. There is a local youth groups they call themselves Viking, who were getting more and more radicalized, getting more and more ideological and more violent, associated themselves with the nationalist scene in Oslo, and we need to do something about it. And they developed inventive methods to deal with this, how to use preventive dialogue with these young people, bringing in their parents. They use parental network groups, and later they have also developed a method on what they called trygghetsguider or safety guides, because they realized that one of the reasons why young people joined these Nazi and racist and right-wing groups was because they needed protection. Some of them had been bullied at school, some of them had been robbed by immigrant youth gangs, and no one would help them. They felt quite alone. The only one who were willing to give them protection were the Nazis, and they delivered. So we need to give them something which can bring them into mainstream society rather than going into these militant groups. So these were part of these inventive methods. And some of these methods were also integrated in the so-called exit project, which I was involved in developing, where we tried to find methods for how to get young people who have been involved in neo-Nazi and racial groups back to mainstream society. Because some of them feared that they would be threatened by their new comrades in the Nazi scene or by their new enemies in the militant anti-racial scene. So they needed a way out, and that was what we tried to do. There were also a lot we could learn from the city of Kristiansand, where they had a conflict going on for several years between a Nazi scene on one hand and a multi-ethnic gang scene on the other, and where they become very good at interagency collaboration. They learned how to work together with the municipality, the police, voluntary organizations, church-based organizations, and working very closely together in order to handle this problem. These have been places where we have learned a lot, and some of these lessons can be transferred to the new problems we now have with radicalization in the direction of ISIS and militant jihadism. But some of the lessons probably don't work in a new setting. Things have changed, things are different. But there are also some things are similar, some are different. Many of the young people who join these militant jihad groups will go as foreign fighters to Syria. If 15, 20 years ago, they wouldn't have joined the Prophet's Ummah. They wouldn't join the Nazis yet. Some of them are converts to jihadism or Islam, but they are exactly the same kind of young people who in the past tended to end up with the neo-Nazis. So much the same kind of type of people. Of course, some of them, many of them come from Muslim backgrounds, so they wouldn't necessarily join the Nazis today, but who are around, who can give us what the Nazis gave us back then. But of course, these jihadi, militant Islamist groups, they have much more to offer. Neo-Nazis have a rather poor ideology compared to this world religion, which has a lot of things to offer, and this particular very militant interpretation, which combines a lot of things, which also brings them excitement and so on. So there is a lot which is different. These people are part of a much stronger international community. We had back in the 90s, there were international connections between the neo-Nazis in Norway and Sweden and Denmark and so on. But this is something completely different. We are on a different level of globalization, which makes this issue different. And of course, in the meantime, we've got the role of social media, which plays a major role in radicalization. And as we used to say in Norwegian, it's gone from gata to data, from the street to computers. It's, in the good old days, we could sort of handle things in the street. And it was easy for police patrols to detect who these people are, to see where they were, they could talk to them. And it's a bit different when they are swimming around somewhere up there we can't see them. So it's a whole new game, and it's much more complicated to sort of find these people and whose young people are they? I mean, they are not necessarily those who live in this area go to this school, because some of them are here and some of them are 2,000 kilometers away, and they're interacting. And whose responsibility is it to handle this group, which is so spread in many ways? The new situation has obviously some challenges where we need to develop new methods. We had, as I mentioned, we had this problem of right-wing extremism from the late 1980s until the early 2000s, and then this Nazi right-wing extremist youth scene was more or less dismantled by a combination of very effective preventive interventions from the police, from the security service, from municipalities, from volunteer organizations, which did a major job. It was also some internal factors in the scene which made them sort of fall apart and rot more or less internally. We had a very shocking racist murder in 2001, the murder of Benjamin Hermansen, which also shocked into this group and led to a stop of recruitment. But it was a very effective effort, after all, which dismantled this scene. Some of these methods, which were very effective to this scene, does not work quite as good with these new militant Islamist or jihadist groups. Some of the methods, like the use of preventive dialogue, has been effective for some, but the security service tells us that it's not really working. Sometimes it seems to be counterproductive. They try to talk to them and they don't get in contact, they refuse to talk to them, or sometimes it just radicalizes them further. So we need to find out how can we get this kind of preventive dialogue work better with this new kind of target group. Perhaps there are other people than the police who can do this work. We need to find out. Because it is obviously a right thing to talk to them, but who shall do it in which ways is something we need to learn more about. Let's see. I mentioned that the initial reaction in Brumunddal from the police, from the municipality, from the local community, when they start to get trouble with the racist and right-wing and xenophobic violence, was a kind of denial that it's not worse here than anywhere else, it's a police problem or it's a social problem, just deal with it, and this kind of reluctance to deal with the problem. We saw the same tendencies in large part of the Muslim community in Norway in the late 2000s, when we started to see around in other European countries and other Scandinavian countries terrorist attacks coming from militant jihadi groups, often young people radicalized locally. And there was a tendency to deny that this is a problem. But gradually we have seen that the Muslim community has realized that this is our problem. These are our kids. This is something we need to do something about. And that was much the same, which was a turning point in Brumunddal, that the local community realized that this is our problem. We need to take responsibility, and that is something we've seen increasing. And I think that's a very important development, because now it's just not something just pushed upon them from government, but it's something they realize is our problem. It's our children who go to Syria. It's our children who die. And it's a lot of despair among some parents who have lost their children in this horrible way. And there is a growing realization that we, as a community, as a Muslim community, need to deal with. I think that is important, and it's something society at large needs to support and assist them in, because it's also the sense of feeling that many parents whose children have left, or they feel that they are leaving, are feeling that they are alone. It's their problem, but they feel really alone about handling that. They need more competence, they need support, they need someone who can help them, and that is something I think we need to develop in Norway. Because we learned a lot from that when it came to parental network groups for parents whose children were in the Nazi scene, that they felt very much alone on their own, but once you can bring the group together of concerned parents who want to do something, they could help each other. This is something we could learn and develop also, I think, for parents of these young men and women who go as foreign fighters or go to Syria and Iraq, that they need support from the broader society. You know, that is something I think we need to develop. Let's see, we have some other some question about who are the stakeholders in Norway. We're working on prevention of radicalization. Of course, we have seen now this national action plan against radicalization and violent extremism. This is second edition coming out last year. This is one expression of a kind of national concern at the high level of politics, that this is something society needs to do something about. But we also have a number of different stakeholders in the local communities who work in this. In a formal setting, we have what we call SLT, Samordning av lokale tiltak, or coordination of local measures, which is a collaboration between social services, schools, municipalities, and police. And at a higher level, there are something called police council, which is a strategic decision-making body for the police leadership and municipal leadership. And these are ways to try to coordinate the local efforts to handle this. And I think that this is something my friend Ingrid Carlson often said, that in the Scandinavian municipalities, the Scandinavian welfare state is to a large extent based on very large and quite strong municipalities. They have a very large part of they constitute a large part of the public sector in the Scandinavian countries, which means that they have quite a lot of measures they can implement. And that means that the municipalities need to be at the forefront. But it varies quite a lot from municipalities to municipalities how much effort they put into prevention, and in particular when it comes to this problem. I don't know exact numbers, but I think it's around half or a bit more than half the municipalities who have this SLT model. You could correct me, Ingrid.
It's about 180 out of 428, but mostly larger municipalities, nearly all of them have this youth preventive council.
Yeah. So it means that still it's less than half of the municipalities who have this SLT model, which means that they can coordinate. And some of these have only a part-time person who has responsibility. So it's very uneven how well the municipalities are handling crime prevention at a more strategic and systematic way. So there's a lot of things we need to improve. Some municipalities are excellent and some are quite poor in this respect. And some get this problem really hard without being prepared, because suddenly people go from a very rural community to Syria to fight, and the locals don't understand anything. This suddenly struck us like the lightning, and they have not been prepared, they have not seen it, and they fear that there might be others around there, and they need to sort of get ready for that task. So there is now some research going on, funded partly by Ingrid Carlson's organization COES and the Ministry of Justice, to learn more about how do municipalities handle these kind of violent radicalization, and how can they sort of bring together, pool together experiences and methods in order to do it more systematically. Yeah, I think I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for those presentations. I think that what's interesting, there's a lot that was very interesting about all of them, was the range of issues that were covered and the range of disciplines that are involved.